We are also following reports from the Boston Herald newspaper that the Massachusetts governor's office, among others, are now refusing to release any records on taxpayer-funded benefits the accused bombers may have been receiving. Governor Deval Patrick's administration citing privacy laws. Critics say the public deserves to know, including Democratic critics. Deval Patrick, of course, a Democrat. As questions remain on how this attack was funded, how the older brother, who was on a terrorist watch list, continued to receive public assistance, and now people want to know just how much he was getting. Joining me now, Mark Thiessen, who's a fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and a former speechwriter for President George W. Bush. John Holinko is the founder of the progressive group Left Action and president of Holinko Consulting. And so I'll start with you on it, John, because this Democratic congressman, Stephen Lynch, came out and said the public has a right to know about whether this terror attack was funded by public money. Your thoughts?
Well, I mean, I think it would be outrageous if it was. But let's remember, the guy's an American citizen. He's presumed innocent until proven guilty. And look, I think he's guilty as sin. I mean, let's face it. There are multiple witnesses. But at the same time, you know, I'm not understanding what the urgency is to release.
How about the dead guy?
The dead guy?
Yeah, he's not presumed innocent.
Well, I mean, at this point, you know, I mean, he's dead. But in terms of releasing
So why are we so worried about his privacy?
Well, I guess the question is, what do we gain from releasing all this stuff about, you know, whether or not they were on welfare? Is it just another excuse to attack welfare recipients? Is there a, I mean, is there a whole barrage of welfare
recipients? Don't we deserve to know whether we paid for that bomb? Well,
you know, I mean, look, there's all kinds of things we need to investigate and figure out. But I mean, we talked about the terror watch list and receiving welfare. What is frankly truly outrageous is that you can buy guns and explosives on the terror watch list. Why aren't we addressing that? I mean, that's something that is far more relevant to what we're trying to prevent here.
Okay, Mark?
Well, of course people are outraged that the governor is not being more forthcoming, and people are outraged to learn that a terrorist who attacked our country and killed people in our midst was receiving welfare from the American taxpayer. But I think really the problem here is not that these terrorists were on the welfare rolls. The problem is that they were taken off the terrorist watch list. I mean, if you have somebody who you're watching for suspected terrorist activity, the CIA and the FBI have intelligence on them, you probably don't want to share that information with the local welfare authorities because you might tip them off. You don't want to take him off the welfare because that might let him know that he's on a terrorist watch list. So the fact that they didn't share that information or take him off the welfare rolls is not the problem. The problem is that we had information that this guy from Russia, both the CIA and the FBI, that this guy was a radical Islamist, and yet somehow he managed to leave the United States, spend 6 months in Chechnya and Dagestan, which are hotbeds of al-Qaeda activity, and then come back into the United States without setting off any alarm bells and carry out a terrorist attack. The outrage is the news that you reported that 9 years after the underwear bomber was read his Miranda rights after 50 minutes, I mean 4 years after the underwear bomber was read his Miranda rights, we're still reading Miranda rights to terrorists. So those are the things that we should be outraged about, not the fact that this guy was getting welfare benefits.
Mid-interrogation. I mean, the Miranda rights were going to come under the Obama administration, but mid the administration's own FBI performing its interrogation and the FBI agents saying, we're not done. He's giving up valuable intelligence information, and lo and behold, out comes Miranda. I want to ask you, John,
and remember, Megan.
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
I mean, remember, Megan, that after the underwear bomber in 2009, Eric Holder actually came out, and there was a Fox News story on this, and came out and admitted that the Miranda law was a problem, and he promised he was going to go to Congress and try and get more flexibility in the Miranda law. Well, what happened to that? Why are we still under the same Miranda laws? Where was the Obama administration effort? If they want to do this through the criminal justice system, I think we should do it by declaring them enemy combatants and do it through the military and intelligence system. But if you're going to use the criminal justice system, why don't they fix the criminal justice system 4 years after they read a terrorist his Miranda rights? Holder promised to do this, and he did nothing about it. Well, that's what we should be outraged about.
We are going to talk with Andrew McCarthy, who's a very brilliant lawyer who worked with the DOJ, and he's the guy who put the blind sheikh in jail, the guy who bombed the World Trade Center in '93. And we will talk to him about whether this whole public safety exception argument that we got from the administration, like, don't worry, don't need enemy combatant status, we'll go public safety exception to Miranda, that'll give us the time to ask him what we want, was a big fraud. Whether that was a big fraud that was essentially perpetrated on the American people, because that exception, under their own interpretation and behavior, gave them not enough time. Gave them not enough time. The FBI interrogators had said it so to lawmakers on Capitol Hill. After the break, we're going to pick up this debate, that and plus, I mean, how are you on the terrorist watch list and getting public benefits at the same time? Mark Thiessen's back with me now, John Holinko as well. I want to ask you, Mark, whether it really is possible, okay, that, I mean, in your mind, do we have a Department of Homeland Security that is looking at Tamerlan Tsarnaev on this terrorist watch list and saying, all right, nobody alert anybody because we want to hold on to that information? I mean, isn't this exactly the kind of thing that you would want government agencies to know about at the state level as well? And whether that includes, you know, the governor's office or welfare offices, I don't know, but isn't that something that is meant to be shared?
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems after 9/11 was the fact that we didn't have enough information sharing. We actually could have stopped the 9/11 attack if the FBI and CIA were sharing information. So information sharing is important, but there are limits to information sharing, and I probably would stop at the Massachusetts Welfare Office. I wouldn't trust the People's Republic of Massachusetts welfare people not to tip off the terrorist by cutting off his welfare benefits that he was on a terror watch list. So I think you don't want to let these people know that you're investigating them sometimes. So I think it might be understandable. There could be an explanation why he was getting benefits. What isn't understandable is how we had all this intelligence about the guy, which obviously turned out to be right because he blew up a backpack bomb and killed people in Boston, yet we took him off the terrorist watch list. How did this guy get off the terrorist watch list? That's the intelligence failure that we should be upset about.
Was that a concern at the time for his, quote, privacy and rights, John, that they're now citing in refusing to turn over information about whether he had public assistance?
Well, I want to defend Massachusetts here. I mean, I think the implication that Massachusetts in particular can't be trusted maybe was unintentional, but, you know, that's really not fair. I do agree with Mark, though, that there's just so much sharing you can realistically do with this kind of information before you have the risk of tipping someone off. But, you know, again, I mean, are we really going to do background checks for receiving welfare, but not background checks for guns and explosives for someone on the terror watch list? Do we understand, like, how absurd that prioritization is?
All right, guys. Thank you. We appreciate you being here.